Friday, February 20th, 2026. Lots going on in the world. We'll be talking about that here on Pod TV and hearing what people's reactions are to a number of these stories that are taking place and all along those lines. So, like I said, a lot's going on in the world, and we're always glad to be talking about here on Pod TV and seeing what folks have to say about a number of these stories and how they are reacting to them and all along those lines. But former Prince Andrew's arrest upends the royal family's effort to move past his scandal. So Andrew was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, as King says law must take its course, and that's definitely something that people are talking about in the world and all along those lines. Israeli settlers kill a 19-year-old Palestinian American, officials and witnesses say. Board of Peace members pledge billions for Gaza release. So Trump gets his Board of Peace even as bigger countries are steering clear. So Trump's Board of Peace promises billions for Gaza with few details. France says surprised by European Commission's presence at the Board of Peace. But definitely that is something that folks are talking about, and we'll see what this Board of Peace does and all along that kind of way. Kim lauds North Korea's economy and regional standing. So North Korea's Kim Jong-un triumphant at a rare Congress. So North Korea shows Kim Jong-un at the wheel of a mobile rocket launcher. So that's definitely something that people are talking about as well. Industry leaders discuss AI's future at India AI Impact Summit. So Bill Gates Foundation says sudden withdrawal was to ensure the focus remained on the AI Summit key priorities. So they're hoping that they can keep the key priorities going and all along those lines. And India's AI moment, a scale breakthrough, and the hard work ahead. So Money Talks as India searches for its place in the global AI. India is eyeing a $200 billion in data center investments as it ramps up its AI hub ambitions. Life is harsh and dangerous in Russian-run parts of Ukraine, activists and former residents are saying. So that's definitely something that people are talking about. And the Mexico Navy seized a submarine with 4 tons of cocaine. 4 tons of cocaine was seized from a narco sub off of Mexico as El Salvador makes record drug busts at sea. U.S. intel leads to Mexico seizing 7 tons of cocaine at sea. So it looks like this was Mexico seizing a huge cocaine haul in a rare joint action with the U.S. And for Chagossians return to the island in an attempt to stop the British transfer to Mauritius. So deportation of Chagos Islanders is blocked by a judge. So Britain issues removal order to 4 who landed on Chagos Atoll. So definitely that's something going on where people are trying to, I guess, hold on to their land. Austria convicts climber over girlfriend's death on mountain. So Austria climber found guilty after girlfriend froze to death on the mountain and all along those lines. So a climber is found guilty of manslaughter after leaving his girlfriend to die on Austria's tallest mountain. And former South Korea President Yoon received that life sentence for over a martial law attempt. So that's definitely something that people are paying attention to, just like they're paying attention to what's going on in Sudan. As UN experts say, destruction by Sudan's rebels in El Fasher in October is bearing some hallmarks of some horrible things and all along those lines. So sudden atrocities are hallmark of genocide is actually what they are saying. So those atrocities and Sudan were entirely so predictable. So why did the rest of the world fail to stop them is what was being asked in The Guardian. So that's definitely something that people were paying attention to in news from The Guardian and all along those lines. So like I said, a lot's going on in the world, including right here in the United States. So we're always interested in hearing people's reactions to a number of these stories and how it is impacting their lives and all in that way. So lots going on in that space, and we're always glad to be reporting on these various stories and all in that kind of way. Was anyone at fault in Sierra Nevada avalanche deaths? 2 sisters died in a Tahoe area avalanche during trek with friends. Skiers in deadly Tahoe avalanche appear to have taken a route rated most dangerous option. So 3 women were identified as Tahoe avalanche victims, including some Stanford alums and everything like that. And Trump is considering limited strikes to force Iran to make a nuclear deal. So Trump appears ready to attack Iran as U.S. strike forces take shape. U.S. gathers the most air power in the Mideast since the 2003 Iraq invasion. So that's definitely something that people are talking about as well. And an anonymous donation raises reward to help fined Nancy Guthrie to over $200,000. So Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is definitely something that is very much in the news. And in Arizona, authorities are turning to genealogy in the ongoing search for Nancy Guthrie. Scientists worry about the lasting damage from the Potomac sewage spill. So, in a feud with Wes Moore, Trump slings feces. So, Bowser says Potomac spill aid request came after talks with the White House. DC water reaches damaged section of Potomac interceptor that caused the sewage spill. And Trump's tariffs will near their fate before the Supreme Court. So investors brace for near-jerk market reaction to a coming Supreme Court tariff decision. So they're even asking some people what a Supreme Court tariff ruling may mean for your own personal money. So that is definitely something that people are talking about as well. And a tornado watch was extended for much of central Indiana. Severe weather leaves its mark on Bloomington. Powerful tornadoes leave trail of destruction through parts of the Midwest. So that's definitely something that folks are paying attention to weather-wise. And in a rare move, the Veterans Affairs pulls back on a controversial disability rule. So the VA backs off rules that would have cut off benefits amid a outrage. So Trump wants veterans to lose benefits as soon as their PTSD symptoms are treated. So some people, including Slate Magazine, are saying that there's a problem with that. And the VFW says new federal rules could lower disability compensation for millions of veterans. So this is definitely going to have an impact on the veteran community. Virginia judge blocks Democrats' referendum, and that's a blow to redistricting efforts in that area. So Virginia judge blocks Democrats' referendum, a blow to redistricting efforts over 4 U.S. House seats. So that's definitely that folks are talking about that. And Donald Trump says it signs an executive order boosting glyphosate productions. So Kennedy defends Trump glyphosate order, and Maha erupts as midterms approach. Maha moms turn against Trump. Women feel like they were lied to. So Trump orders seeks to protect a weed killer at center of barrage of lawsuits. Trump executive order on a weed chemical didn't do RFK Jr. any favors, and all along those lines. So folks are definitely still talking about that and seeing how that is impacted them also. And death in a ski accident at North Star. Off-duty employee found deceased at North Star, California resort. So a missing San Jose student was found dead at the North Star resort. He was only 21 years old, and all along those lines. So like I said, a lot's taking place in the world. I'm glad to be bringing in Rick Rosner and Sasha Starr and see what they've got to say about a number of these stories and all along those lines. And know that we'll have the Ukraine, Russia, China show later on. Hey, Rick, I was watching the commercial. I did not realize that vapes had a lot of horrible chemicals in them until the commercial came on that I was watching.
Roundup.
Some of the chemicals of vapes are also some of the chemicals that are in like some things that you don't want to be breathing. Like I think one of them was the thing that they used for funerals, and there were a number of other chemicals that this anti-vape commercial talked about.
Formaldehyde and stuff. But anyway, glyphosate,
Right.
Monsanto's Roundup. The administration is talking out of both sides of its mouth. And you got two idiots. You got Trump on the one hand, you got RFK Jr. on the other hand. And anyway, freaking. I want to talk about tariffs. Since Trump announced tariffs last April on Liberation Day, the U.S. has basically created 0 new jobs. He shut down job growth. I think we just got new quarterly growth statistics, and growth dropped to 2.2% year over year, where you want to be at 3 or 4. So Trump effed the economy. The last 2 years of the Biden economy were pretty strong, especially compared to the rest of the world, but no more.
No more, and it looks like he's doing a lot of crazy things with the economy, whether it's the tariffs or a number of other things. Actually, was stumbling through my Instagram and saw a video that I never thought I would have seen, Sasha and Rick and everything, but it was actually Nick Fontes, who we know is very much of a racist, and all along those lines. And he was basically calling Trump out because he said, like you just said, that Doge was a disaster, Liberation Day was a disaster. He had several things that he listed was a disaster, and he basically was urging people. I think he was urging them to not vote. I don't think he was like in the Democrats either, but I have to go back and watch the video. But he was definitely calling out what he called several disasters in the Trump administration. And we know Fontes used to be one of his allies and all along those lines. So it sounds like there's a lot of division within even his own camp and everything like that. So what's y'all's take on that? Because I saw that video and that was not a video I would have expected to see as recently as a year ago.
Well, interesting development is that the closest ally of the United States, United Kingdom, forbade U.S. military to use its base in UK and Diego Garcia in Indian Ocean for attacks on Iran. Leave it or take it. Without that, all they can use is the avia carriers. He has 2 in that region, and fly B-2 bombers like he did last year in Iran. But it's a long journey. They can carry a limited number of weapons, very expensive, and they cannot sustain it for a long period of time. Okay, they can fly once or twice, but they cannot do it. For containing the country like Iran, you need constant bombardments, and eventually you still need food on the ground. You cannot just by bombardment change regime.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Breaking news. The Supreme Court strikes down most of Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, I knew that was coming, so they did track it down. So that's going to not be something he's going to like and everything. So that is some major breaking news and everything like that. So definitely that's something that folks will be paying attention to, and all along those lines. Hey, Rick and Sasha, anybody wants to answer it and everything. I was doing a little bit of research on Miss Cook. That's the African-American woman that was coming out in being a grandma and being very supportive of Trump and everything like that. Her grandson was killed in 2017, apparently in a Plenty of Fish dating situation where he had gone and met with these people after he had met them off of the app Plenty of Fish, and he was horribly murdered. And I definitely have sympathy and empathy for what she went through and all along those lines. But it occurred to me that the crime occurred and a lot of the protests occurred in 2017. And I know she's getting, and we talk about Trump being transactional, a lot of support from Trump and everything like that. Wasn't Trump president in 2017? I think he was president.
Yes, he became president in January of 2017.
Right, that's what I thought. And this incident took place in the fall. So if these protests were actually happening during his administration, so I know that he took her to Congress recently and everything like that. But it seems like he could have been pushing for that in his first term, but instead of being transactional and pushing for it in his second term. But I don't know if y'all had realized that, but I just saw that when I was looking at this particular case and saw that it was.
Yeah, I mean, you can always find a couple deluded people to support Trump who shouldn't. More important is the Supreme Court. This is huge, right. Because the tariffs have screwed the country over the past year. And so is he going to keep? I don't know what's going to happen.
Excuse me.
But they haven't done anything they're supposed to do. They've raised prices for consumers. They've increased the trade deficit that they were supposed to help. We have a higher trade deficit now than before the tariffs. That is, we're buying more shit from overseas than we export to foreign buyers.
So are there any actions that tariffs have to be removed, or?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think that's what he's looking up to see what the consequences.
You're supposed to only be able to unilaterally impose tariffs as president without getting permission from Congress. You're only supposed to be able to do that in an emergency. And the Supreme Court ruled that we don't have an emergency.
So they're saying it's not an emergency, so maybe that means you can't do it and everything like that. Speaking of news, and I think you kind of alluded to it, they're saying the U.S. economic growth slowed sharply in the fourth quarter. So that was last year's fourth quarter and everything like that. So it's definitely something that's going on in that space and everything like that. So apparently Trump is also doing some other stuff that was off of Reuters because his EPA is going to weaken rules limiting harmful mercury and air toxics from coal plants. So I know he wants us to go more into coal. So I guess he's going to try to find ways to eliminate some of the reasons that people don't like coal in the first place. So is any of this going to work? Because this is
no. I mean, coal is a ridiculous form of energy now. I mean, we should be, and for years we were lowering our dependence on coal. There are only 40,000 coal miners left in America compared to like 1 million coal miners 100 years ago. He's not saving an industry. It's an almost dead industry. Coal is now expensive. It's dirty. There's no such thing as clean coal. And other forms of energy, wind and solar, nuclear, all can be much cheaper than coal. He's a ridiculous jackass who only wants to get revenge on America for perceived slights against him.
Yeah, and he's still running that idea of 4 more years, which is actually scary since legally he can't do that and everything. But apparently at his Black History event, he had his supporters there chanting 4 more years as if they can have a that would be a 12-year term and everything like that. But we know that's not legal. But apparently 13 months into President Trump's second term, a growing majority of Americans have soured on his handling of immigration, with 58% saying he has gone too far deporting undocumented immigrants. And that's a rise of 8 points since last fall. And that was according to a new Washington Post, ABC News, Ipsos poll and everything like that. So I know sometimes you don't always believe polls, Rick, but it does sound like this poll is probably correct. So what's your take on this? Because a lot of people are not too happy with him on this whole notion of immigration.
He hasn't delivered on most of the things that people, almost all of the things that people voted for him for. He has shut down traffic across the border, but everything else he's failed at.
Yep, he definitely failed on that. I know one of the other things you talked about.
Shut down traffic. It's just that people don't want to come anymore.
Yeah, because we're treating immigrants like shit.
Yep, we're definitely treating immigrants like shit and everything like that. So definitely there's a lot going on in that space. Dr. Sharif is back. I know he came in earlier and actually put it on his website and everything like that. So definitely I'll bring him in so he can join the conversation. Also, hey, I know that on your other show, and I think you added on one of your episodes about this notion of that being naked at night, Rick, of brain rot. And apparently that's a term by now that folks are thinking about. It's slang to describe the idea that being very online is harming our brain. It also describes the feeling of coming up for air after spending too many hours scrolling.
So when Google came along, people I thought, and a lot of people thought that tech would make us smarter. That having access to all the information in the world would make people smarter. But the past 20 years have shown no. Tech is making us stupider. We're outsourcing our thinking. When humans domesticated dogs 10, 15,000 years ago, dogs got stupider. Wolves are smarter than dogs. But when we turned dogs into pets, they outsourced our dog. We do the thinking for dogs now. Dogs don't know what the F is going on. We just provide for their needs, and then they just live in our houses. And it's the same deal with tech. We are outsourcing a lot of our thinking to frickin' tech, and it's making us stupider. Studies have shown that the average IQ of the entire world is declining now.
Yep, and that's what this woman, Catherine Price, wrote this book. Maybe I'll invite her and see if she can come in. But she wrote a book called How to Break Up With Your Phone. But like I said, she says phones are actually rotting our brains and everything like that. So research suggests that scrolling through short videos on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube Shorts is affecting.
Well, I have brain rot myself. I used to read 3-4 books a week. Now it's like one book a month if I'm lucky. I don't have the attention span. I have to run to my computer and check to see what's going on every few minutes. Yeah, I'm more of an idiot now than I was 10 years ago.
Is Sharif still there? And if so, what's his opinion on that? Because he works with a lot of students and everything like that.
What's your question, please?
How much are your students spending online, and how much are you having to curtail their use of online and everything like that? Because that's what the whole notion of brain rot is, and it's not just a U.S. problem; it's a global problem.
If you see this South Asian market, like this India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, our students, they have strong engagement with social media, with internet, with like all of the freelancing activities, remote jobs, learning and earning activities. Also, if you see just yesterday, like all of the AI giant corporation, they come to India, like Nvidia, like this OpenAI and Cloud AI, and all of the big companies. And Indian Prime Minister collaborate with this tech giant and the tech corporations, all of the big companies, and that is the commitment that if any company, any startup, they can survive in Indian market, they can grow in the global economy and the global market. So it's a billions of people. I believe that these people, they have a strong engagement with this internets, with this artificial intelligence, with this startup and so on. That is the things I believe the consumer of internet market is growing and growing in country like Bangladesh and so on. So the youth, what is the question? That youth has strong engagement with social media and the internet and all of the portfolio. Thank you.
So the now is, with the Supreme Court ruling against the tariffs, will the Senate and the House give Trump some legislative backup, which I don't know, is unlikely, because the House, they only have 218 Republicans, which is the barest minimum to pass anything if just Republicans vote on stuff. And I don't think they have the votes to give Trump his tariffs back.
So here's the crazy part, and this is why we're in a, I guess you could say, a horrible quagmire. Think about it. So now the tariffs get struck down. That honestly is going to help the economic market, because Trump's tariffs were killing the economic market. However, Trump loves power and doesn't like to be told no. So he's going to try and pressure those in the Republican Party to push tariffs. He's going to sick his hounds on people to get that to happen. Plus, he's going to try and put more tariffs on or do whatever he wants to. On top of that, we're sitting on what if he's going to go to war in Iran. That also is going to hit oil and gas prices. And we're in the middle of an election season. So you're having this horrible storm of this crazy individual who doesn't like to be told no, wants his tariffs, has said the tariffs were the greatest in the world, but doesn't want to report that we're, what is it, 1.1 some odd trillion dollars off. Well, I think it was some odd trillion off on the tariff in terms of the deficit, the tariff deficit. So it's just a problem that we're sitting at right now. So where is he going to go? How is he going to attack? And this is going to get interesting, because something bad, I hate to say it, but something's bad. He's about to do something bad, and we don't know what it's going to be.
Nick, we can't hear your voice. Nope, your voice.
You're on Mickey Mouse again, Nick.
Let's check in with Shaquille.
Shaq, I've been meaning to call you. I just been running around crazy. How's it going, man?
Yeah, no, good. Sorry, I wasn't. I probably wouldn't be able to take your calls anyway after I called you the other day, because I just had a lot on. So So yeah, I just want to. So I'll come just respond to a few of the things that you said there. I'd made this comment before. Obviously, I thought that he was going to win the 2020 election, and I said that Republicans, as a party, are going to have to work out what they want to do post-Trump. Now, regardless of what happens in the midterms, past the midterms, that's it, right? Trump's got 2 more years left of his presidency, and that'll be the end of his presidency, unless something dramatically changes in the Constitution. So, with that being the case, I think that Republicans have to re-strategize and look at what they want to be in the future. No movement can sustain itself for a very long period of time, and Trump and the MAGA movement, if we want to call it that, has been somewhat controversial and divisive. So that'll be really interesting. As far as the tariffs are concerned, it'll be interesting to see if future leaders in the United States try to repair some of the trade imbalances that have occurred. Pam Bondi clumsily said in that inquiry the other day, she sort of talking about Epstein, was referring to how high the Dow was and the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ and all that sort of stuff. She is right; those things are at record highs. But I think that a country's economic health is more than just the height of the stock market. So, I think this election season is going to be very, very interesting to see. And I've also just come back to my own neck of the woods. We see that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as the Prince, has been arrested and then released without charge on his birthday, no less.
Okay,
Well, so he was released on his birthday. I did not realize that.
a follow-on headline is that, according to analysis of the ruling, $175 billion in tariff fees will have to be returned to various nations.
That's
I
what I
can't
wanted to
imagine Trump
know.
willingly doing that. I mean,
That's what I wanted to know. You see, I haven't read the ruling. I had just left to go for a walk, came back, and all of a sudden this ruling came out, what we've been waiting for months. But realized it was the Pod TV network that picked this up in October of last year. And we brought in the guy who was the lead counsel to be on our show because we believe this one had merit. So he came on the show, and we've been following it since then. And then the other.
Why would the countries whose goods were tariffed receive the tariff money paid by American consumers? Why would they receive that money?
This isn't for sure. This is Reuters doing the analysis.
Yeah, I mean.
But what would be the legal theory there? But what would be the legal theory there if a country A has its goods tariffed by the United States? What standing does country A have to seek compensation from the United States?
I understand that, especially if the tariffs were on American citizens, the rebate goes to Americans, right? Remember all the liberals here? You're complaining that, the Americans had to pick up the tariffs. Okay, now the Americans will get the refunds. Am I missing anything?
Well, there's also some other net effects that I think are not as easily observable within one country. So, for example, I talked about this before, where countries like Canada and Australia have increased their trade at the expense of trade with the United States. So you're seeing a realignment of countries wanting to trade outside the US, but you're also seeing some significant issues. For example, New Zealand is an agricultural country. One of their major exports is wool. The problem is that the wool is being sent to China, who is making garments and other fabrics for the United States. And so with the tariffs on Chinese goods, that caused the Chinese to buy less wool from New Zealand, meaning that a lot of New Zealand sheep farmers have actually been losing money in a lot of cases. In some cases, they've actually just had to throw their wool away, which has been quite heartbreaking for them. So there is all of those other effects as well. And I think that even if all the tariffs were to end, I'm not sure that the trade would necessarily come rushing back to the US immediately. I think it's going to take some time.
Oh, yeah, that might be true, but I'm still wondering who's going to get the refunds. I have not read the opinion yet. Like I said, this thing just came down. But it didn't surprise me because we said months ago, we picked this up to be a loser for the Trump administration. and it turned out to be a loser for the Trump administration because basically overstepped his bounds. In other words, I cannot figure out how he's going to win this case. This is a legislative, congressional deal, not an executive decision. So he lost it. Okay, great. Now what?
You have to pay it back.
Well, the only question is who's going to get the refunds. In other words, I was trying to import goods into the United States, okay, and I'm hit with a tariff from the United States. So me as a U.S. citizen, do I get my money back? That's going to be the question that's going to resonate from there.
Well, what about all the farmers who have literally been losing their farms because they couldn't afford to pay the extra cost of what the tariffs imposed on them?
Yeah,
Did they get their money back? I mean, no, they're not. Everything was imposed on middle class and under for all of these price raises, and you cannot recover that to those people. You will never recover that to those people because some people lost things that they will never get back. But the thing is that this did not cost the rich people. This cost all the hardworking middle class and under. It did not cost anyone who, it benefited, which was, Trump and his people. And, you can argue to me all you want that it hurt other people, but the majority of the people who paid for that loss was middle class and under.
So now we go to the issue of damages, as they would say. Like I said, I haven't read the
damages.
But the thing is, if there are damages like that, does the plaintiff, which would be the farmer, have the right to sue the United States government, which would be the defendant, for imposing an illegal tariff and ask not for just compensatory, but basically there'll be compensatory damages, but possibly even punitive damages. So here's what happens. It gives lawyers like myself a lot more work to do, and we get paid. So the thing is, there's a lot of good things that have just come out about this decision. Some lawyers are all going, yay, because I haven't read it yet, but if the issue
as always, the lawyers win. The lawyers always win.
That's what the stock market is doing.
Anybody want to get a fight, just make sure you hire me. I mean, that's kind of
the markets are generally up, but not a lot up. The markets are up by 0.25%, 1/3% right now. We'll see if they go up any further as people digest this news. With regard to farms, nearly 1% of U.S. farms went bankrupt last year. 15,000 farm bankruptcies out of a total of about 1.86 million U.S. farms.
But
that's
how does that compare with prior
That's a lot
years?
of food.
Okay, but wait a minute. How does that compare with prior years?
I don't know. I shall
Yeah, but
if you're going to take that argument, if you're going to try and take that argument to court, right? You've got to, one, say that the tariffs caused it, right? Caused for the farmers not to be able to. No, we could probably all agree that logically, yes, farmers have experienced a decrease in their exports, which meant that there's less demand on their goods, and so therefore they've experienced a loss. But knowing that and proving it in a court of law, I think two different things. And then, the defendant, the government's just going to turn around and say, well, I don't think you'd even be able to bring the case. But if you were, the government's just going to say, well, there are economic cycles. Prove one or the other.
It's not easy. You're right, Shaquille. In other words, when you go to issues of damages, and I've had to do that in front of the court before, it is not that easy. Everybody thinks, I'll go to court and win. No, you go to court and you find you're in a big dog fight. It's like saying, go into a bar in Australia and win your bar fight. How are you going to do it? You don't even know who you're fighting. So,
hey, we don't generally have guns here, so you probably you'll probably be okay.
Don't you guys have bar fights?
Just really quickly, we have to broaden this out. We keep talking about farmers, but there were, I think, what was it? Last year was the highest number of actual store closings and so on and so forth, bankruptcies.
I had 10 around me that closed.
So we're talking about just one industry with farming. We also have to look about, is there going to be a class action lawsuit of a bunch of people, individuals who actually lost their livelihoods based around this as well? Because it did affect, as Kim pointed out correctly, it did affect the lower income individuals, middle to lower income individuals heavily. So I mean, we can just look at, farming is one industry, but no, I think because Nick, you're correct. There are going to be a lot of lawyers that are salivating right now because there are going to be a lot of class action lawsuits coming from this because it did hit a lot of people. And it was proven that the majority of the tariffs were paid by the American people.
Yeah. And so the thing is,
Yeah, but I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can take the government support for bad policy and say compensatory damage. I mean, maybe you can, but I don't think the legal system is set up to allow that. Because
the legal system allows anything.
The slippery slope argument being made is that then in the future, any industry group or any group of people who feel that the policy didn't work in their interest could then take the matter to court.
Hey, Rick,
you can take anyone to court. You can take anyone to court, right?
Yeah, but there is some level of sovereign immunity as well.
I did the research. I looked it up. So, and it proves that sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about because I said 15,000 farm bankruptcies. There's a form of bankruptcy that I've never heard of before. It's called Chapter 12. It's specifically for farms. And I said 15,000 bankruptcies. Well, according to this, there in 2025, there were 315 Chapter 12 filings, which is up 46% from the previous year, which also was up over the year before that. So yeah, farm bankruptcies are increasing, but not at the rate that I initially said. It's
right, but the trickle down effect, or a ripple effect, is everyone. And we need to take that into account. There are, about 10 stores and restaurants just in my local vicinity that completely closed up. I mean, without warning either. I just walk up one day and they're closed. And I hear people grumbling as they're walking out of a store. I can't believe I had to pay this much. This is costing me too much. I can't afford to live this way. People who are on fixed incomes cannot afford to buy food for their families like they were previous to Trump. They just can't anymore. So
I think this is part of the big issue. This is why I advocated so strongly on behalf of small businesses, because what ends up happening is that the so-called mum and dad stores end up experiencing a lot of these things. Wages have gone up, inflation's gone up, all of these different things have gone up. Big businesses and big corporations can handle it. And from a macroeconomic perspective, economic advisors and politicians will simply go, well, the economy is really high, GDP is really high, and that offsets the issue. But it doesn't, because as you guys have rightly pointed out, a reasonably small sliver of the population actually gets the benefit of all of that, and everybody else actually can find themselves in much more difficult circumstances. I also just want to point out that with all the tariffs and everything else that's been going on, when I first started on these shows back in 2018, 19, whatever it was, right? 2020 must have been. We were complaining about the US debt being 30 trillion. Now the US debt is sitting up at 40 trillion almost. That is a horrendously high debt level, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. What exactly is the plan?
Well, before we get off to that piece, because just really quickly, they are projecting it to hit 60 trillion within the next, 10 years or so. So yeah, it's going to skyrocket. But honestly, this right here, what's going on? Because when we're looking at the federal policies and stuff like that, how you had pointed out that might not be able to sue or bring litigation against that. Well, that's what state attorneys generals might do. And that would be pulling people from how the tariffs could have affected their state and their individuals, because that's what state attorneys generals are going to be doing. So now you have a bunch of litigation that may come into play, which also may drive what you're talking about, how the national debt is sitting way above that 40 trillion. Now it may kick up even higher, because now you're going to have that litigation from the states that may kick in based off of what we're just talking about here, which could be, this right here is a monumental problem. And honestly, when Trump went and talked about his peace, whatever crap, that we're going to donate now $10 billion, we're not going to have $10 billion. He should donate the money that he's suing the state, the federal government for $10 billion also. So it's just right now, it's the budget.
I want to bring that up just briefly. Because of what I went through with the IRS several years ago, there is an immunity to the IRS for a lot of things that they do, but there's also a cap to what people can sue them for. So you can say that you're going to sue them because Trump says anything he wants, but there is a law that says that a cap for certain crimes committed by, and you have to prove they did it. But I think the largest cap is $10,000 that you can sue them for, not 10 billion. So I think Trump got his zeros mixed up because there is a cap to how much the IRS can be sued for.
Well, the only tough part with that is that Trump controls it, so he's negotiating with himself on that.
Well, he doesn't control the cap. There's a legal cap that says you can only sue for this amount or this amount or this amount, but the IRS has full immunity. You have to prove that the individual agent or the individual whatever was indeed 100% intentional in their actions. And then if there was a group of them, you have to prove who in that group. And maybe you can sue each person of that group individually for $10,000, but they made it so it's not worth anyone's time to sue the IRS. You can go to court to win your case, but not sue them, but win the case where they are attacking you and assaulting you and lying and cheating, and which I did. I was in court for that. But you can't personally sue the IRS back for committing crimes against you, and you should be able to, but it's a worthless fight. So
right, Sasha's had his hand up for a while.
I'd like to mention something that you discussed, that mostly who were paying these tariffs were American people or American companies or whatever American it might be. You're forgetting about the international situation. Let's see a country which was subject to U.S. tariffs. It doesn't matter, 10%, 15%, 25% thereafter. So definitely the price of their product or their production would be much higher once United States put their tariffs, and somebody will pay for it. Doesn't matter who. So that country would not sell a usual amount of goods as if it would not be for the tariffs. So since the tariffs are illegal, and there is as a result of these tariffs, this certain country or countries, they were not able to sell to United States as much as they would normally do. So that could amount for some unspecified damages. I'm not so sure how much there could be, but there is a case if indeed these tariffs were illegal in the first place. And I don't even talk about the investors who lost their shirt on Liberation Day, and the Liberation Day was invention of Trump only. And this is illegal to begin with, and it caused a lot of losses. I don't know if the investors are going to do anything about it, but that's something to have.
So you asked if states are going to sue. States already sued. So
yeah, that's how this came to be.
Can I just come back slightly? I'm sorry, because I don't think we should get into the habit of just
Rick.
Going back to just Trump bashing here. I will say, not to be his defender or anything, I will say that he did talk about doing these things coming into the last election, and then he got in there and he's managed to fill up his executive with people who are not really going to question too much. They're pretty much just going to go along with whatever he wants to do. So, it's not like he's just sort of done a lot of these things on the fly. He's actually, things like Venezuela, we certainly weren't expecting. But, all these things are stuff that he talked about. So the question is going to be not just are things more tough today than what they were before. Every president has their challenges, and every economic time has their challenges. And the question will be, what sort of things do you want to see in the future? And what can the Democrats offer and what can the Republicans offer in 2028 that's actually going to make the lives of everyday people better and increase trade with the United States with the rest of the world?
So what should the Democrats offer? Kamala Harris offered a $25,000 down payment for first-time home buyers. That got no traction. So what can
Well,
and-
look, in
How
our
about a
system in
ballot
Australia
budget?
and the system in the UK,
Hello?
you generally actually know who the opposition leader is going to be, right? So, like, you know who that person's going to be pretty much straight after the election, and that person generally will represent the opposition all the way through to the next election. But your system is a bit different because you've got your primaries and all the rest of it. I think that the major thing that held Kamala Harris back was that she really didn't have a lot of time. I mean, she may have won under different circumstances, but I think she didn't have a lot of time, and I think that a lot of people got turned off the Democrats, but mostly with the debate between Biden and Trump, where Biden really stumbled, and I think a lot of people felt that had been covered up from them. So that was really, really damaging to them. As I said, with Republicans, they're going to have an issue because JD Vance doesn't poll that highly. So the question the Republicans are going to have is, well, what exactly is the economic plan for you moving forward from 2028? Is it going to be the same that we've just seen, or is it going to be going in a different direction? Democrats have got the advantage that whatever they do is going to be going in a different direction. So I think they should focus on that. There are a lot of weak spots that the Trump administration has, and the latest polls show him, falling, across the board on a number of things. The lack of resolution to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the lack of really stability in Israel-Palestine, the increase in hostilities potentially with Iran, with Venezuela, etc., the deterioration of the relationship between the United States and Canada. All of those things are issues that are weak spots for him. His strong spots are the markets are up and potentially he's brought some tech jobs back to the United States.
Shaquille, I'd like to ask you a question. I'm pretty sure you're aware that our Prime Minister Carney is going to address Australian Parliament early March. And Carney now is heading a 40 countries coalition, including all 27 members of European Union and South Korea, Japan, and Australia, and New Zealand, and many other, 40 altogether. And all these countries are making political and economical blocks of free trade, no tariffs trade, and United States is being excluded from all these agreements. So this could, now European Union already offered €1 as a settlement for all the international transactions within these new coalitions. And that could also drive back the value of US dollars, understandably. So do you think that Canada is taking slowly a leadership, international business, a transactional leadership from United States?
Well, I think Canada, being a Commonwealth country, has a lot of advantages as well. And I think the forming that block makes a lot of sense and is a good idea. The euro, I think, is the currency that probably has the most likelihood of displacing the US dollar. My only concern is that I think the euro should fail as a currency because there's too many countries using it and they've got vastly different economies. But I've long said, as an Australian person, I've long had a big affection for Canada. A lot of people don't know that most Australians are able to get almost automatically a working visa to Canada if they're under the age of 30 or 35 or whatever it is, and it's almost automatically renewed. So you can go to Canada for 4 years in your 20s or your early 30s. And if you like it, you've been there for 4 years, you can start to apply for citizenship, etc. The process in Canada is a lot easier than what it is in the United States. And very few countries have things like the US's healthcare system and that sort of stuff. So Canada feels more like home to people from Europe and people in Australia and etc. So I think that Canada is taking advantage of that leadership gap with the advantage of the fact that Canada has much easier access to the US markets. And so that I think is going to affect the United States. Also, as you said, the trading blocks, I think that's, again, countries want to trade with each other. It's an important part of how our world economy works. So, that makes sense. And Canada spearheading, that's a good idea for Canada.
Well, Shaquille, also a few recent developments, like I'm talking about last week or two. For example, Toyota made a announcement that they stop any work on Alabama $9 billion plant, and instead the plant is being built in Ontario, Canada. The Ford is transferring its headquarters to Canada. So is Johnson and Johnson. So is Walmart. So you see, even U.S. corporations are now trying to distance themselves from the U.S. government. Isn't it interesting development?
Well, I think that's twofold though, because you see that there are some European branded cars that are manufactured in the United States, but those US manufactured cars are rarely seen outside of North America. So my point being is that what you'll see, I think, is a lot of these big companies that will have multiple factories that face the United States that produce the goods in the US, and then factories elsewhere to face the rest of the world because of regulations and because of retaliatory tariffs. I just want to quickly say something with the tariffs as well. Look, tariffs is not normally something I would go for, but with some limited exceptions, it could make sense. So, for example, Australia has a goods and services tax, so a consumption tax at the point of sale, or GST, and that GST amount is 10% across the country, right? If you were to have a tariff of 10%, that would act like a national sales tax, which the US can't easily put in. But having tariffs at 140% and then dropping them to 50% and all that sort of stuff, the issue with doing that is not just that it pushes up the prices, but it makes it far more difficult for anybody to be able to and work out what their how they want to create their supply lines and what services they want to provide, where they should be allocating their resources. And a lot of people will just go, what's too hard? I'm just going to pull out of that market altogether. And that's the real damage that could be caused to the United States with this.
The Alabama thing, Toyota pulling out, that is unsubstantiated so far. It's just a rumor.
So it's been an official announcement in Japan, in Parliament of Japan, and the deal has been signed.
All right, okay. I'm going off as of last night. It was a rumor.
Okay. I think you're looking at very dated information.
Okay, that was as of last night.
I'd like to change the subject a little bit. I've noticed that since Prince Andrew's or former Prince Andrew's arrest, that there's been a few comments in America about how the British justice system is working and the American one's not, because the only person to be arrested was Prince Andrew. I'm actually not sure how I feel about this, because if you're one of the victims of Epstein and his group, you wouldn't necessarily feel that great about this arrest, because the arrest has got nothing to do with what happened to those victims. What are you guys?
I think you need to read the files before you speak, and you need to understand the difference between someone being in the files and being an accused person in the files versus being someone who was just in the files to be a witness or who did go to the islands. It's like none of the victims ever accused Clinton, but Clinton did go to the islands. He seemed to have a preference for Ghislaine, someone older, but he went with his security. He went with his assistant. He went with a lot of people, but the victims have listed their accused. They and what needs to happen. But Prince Andrew, which I wish because we discussed this, Nick and I did, on a legal platform. And I asked him, I said, why are some people being allowed to seal their records now when they are definitely listed as one of the accused? And Nick, told me that there are some legal things that can take place, as in if they had performed a settlement with the victims. And if they performed a settlement, then they can seal their records, according to the law. And I wish Nick was here to explain it better. So there are, Andrew was listed as someone a few years back who did indeed do a settlement with many of the victims. And they did release him they said that they are still investigating him. They have not charged him, but they did remove his title, and they didn't do that lightly. They did it based on investigations of him being more than just.
No, they did that. No, they did that because of immense pressure. They did that because of immense pressure from the public.
No, they did
for his
because
titles to be.
Real quick,
he's listed as an accused. You have to go through the list. He is listed as an accused.
Just really quick, I can see where Shaq is coming from that perception, because what Andrew is being arrested for is is around selling trade secrets to Epstein, and that is different from being from the atrocities that he committed while he was there. Because for the atrocities that he committed, his title was just stripped, and that's not what he was arrested for. So right. I can understand what Shaq is trying to say, but I would say and retort that Prince Andrews is facing justice in some shape, form, or fashion around Epstein. And I can see that victims would probably feel happier that he's facing some type of justice because he did wrong.
Yeah.
And
so
I can see, I can try and understand.
So I somewhat see what you're saying.
He settled with most of his accused as well. He made a payment.
But what I can also see is that this is are the walls finally just slow, are the walls finally closing in? And I can see that the justice around Andrew, even though it's around selling trade secrets, it's still justice. And it could be that canary in the coal mine, because there were others that got affected by this outside of just Prince Andrew. So
can I just point out though?
Was stripped was Charles many years ago, a couple 100 years.
Well, no.
And he was hung for treason for doing something similar, is selling secrets of war. And so maybe that's what they're trying to do here. I don't know what they're doing.
Charles I was brought up for a number of things by Oliver Cromwell. The thing with Andrew, so what he's being accused of doing is giving confidential information and trade information to Epstein, which allegedly is an abuse of public office. Now, personally, I don't think this is going to fly. It's a very, very hard thing to prosecute anyway, because it has to be willful intent. So I don't think it's going to apply. It's not going to fly very well. But also, just remember, he actually hasn't been charged with anything. So he was arrested on his birthday. I'm not sure if he completed a full interview or what, and then he was released without charge. So, at the moment, nothing's actually really happened. And as far as stripping his titles are concerned, that didn't happen because of any parliamentary process. That happened because of an immense amount of public pressure and disgust at Andrew. And in my personal opinion, the institution of the monarchy looking at themselves and saying, we must protect this institution, because they've lost a lot of faith with the British people and with people in other Commonwealth countries.
Two things can be corrected at the same time. The stripping of, yes, there was immense amount of public pressure once people heard about the Epstein files, and that stripped Prince Andrew. We get that, and that's a true statement. But he was still stripped of that title. They didn't just say, well, we should all move past this. We should be getting over this. So that didn't happen. So his title was stripped because of that immense amount of public pressure. Then, the selling of trade, the giving away of trade secrets, they could only hold him for 24 days or 24 hours. And then they were going to have to let him go unless they charged him. So they released him. So there's still investigations going, and they still may charge him even more based on the selling of trade secrets. But again, yes, it is still a battle for these individuals to get full justice. But at least the walls are slowly closing in and people are outraged. This is why right now there was a poll that was done that said 52% of the American people believe that Trump is covering up the Epstein files, which is a huge change. So therefore, it looks like public opinion, public perception is finally leaning towards these victims, these individuals. And the Andrews thing, as well as some of the others. I think there was people looked at Prince, or one of the Saudi Arabian princes. There was another individual that got looked at as well. But people are starting to open their eyes and starting to push forward on this. So it's not something that is just difficult.
All the victims want justice.
People are wanting
Victims
justice
want
now.
justice.
More people are on the victim side.
Everybody.
But
wants
they want to
justice.
be heard. Okay, victims want to be heard and believed. Okay,
And-
that's
and
acceptance
we-
is the most important part of any healing of any wrongdoing that has been done to someone. Isn't just the justice itself and being served something for anything. It's about being heard, about being believed and accepted for what you said is true. That's the biggest justice, because every one of these girls now, and they've been standing up for years. They've been standing up since they were 11 years old going, I was raped by these two men. I was sex trafficked by these men. And they've been saying this since they were 11. They didn't say this when Trump was running for president to dishonor him for running for president. They've been saying this and filing lawsuits since they were 11. And you can go look at them. You can look at the police reports. The FBI reports date back to 1992, some back to even further, because Epstein was busted doing some wrongdoings when he was teaching at the school. So but what you also have to look at is who has been protecting him. Who has he been affiliated with since the 80s that, allowed him to do all of this? He was entered into the CIA at a very young age by John Mitchell. John Mitchell introduced him to the people that he ended up working with that gave him a CIA pass. So, you've got to look at who's involved, who was doing what. How were they trafficking? I always said that they used hotels to traffic through, and you have Pritzker, right? Pritzker's the big hotel man. When you read some of the witnesses, they weren't allowed to use his name, but they called him the big hotel man. But if you dig really deep in one of the first testimonies, they used his name. So then
Who
you
else is a big hotel man?
that Pritzker, he owned Hyatt.
No. Who else is a big hotel man?
I know, but your first impulse is to think Trump, right? And it was mine. Immediately I said, you know what? Don't blame Trump yet, because somewhere there's the real name, right? But it ended up being the one who owns Hyatt. So, but I had to dig deep. I couldn't just read the top layer of the lawsuits. So I went deeper, because I knew they were covering up a name for a reason. But the witnesses were no longer allowed to use his name. They could just say big hotel man, which to me, was unfair to Trump. But Trump is listed in there as, by the accused of raping the victims, of slapping them for crying. He was listed by the witnesses of hosting, big parties for children, and just him and Epstein at Mar-a-Lago, where he hosted these big parties. But what I have a problem with is the delayed moral positioning of all of these people who knew these things were happening, who participated and then left, but never turned him in for it. And that's what needs to be answered, as well as why did people let this happen? And I think we're at the end of the show.
We're at the end of the show.
Seeing
We have to go.
everyone. Hi, Jacoby. It's nice seeing you, Nick.
It's
Bye.
always-
Bye.